Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Institute, to this 100th CPE program by the Auditing and Assurance Board during this year 23-24. This webinar is on enhancing trust quotient. As is said of chartered accountants, particularly performing attest functions, assurance functions, that there needs to be some enhancement about the trust, whether the trust is really deficient in the society, what steps are required, all those things we need to discuss, and what are various measures that a profession should adopt so that there is no gap between the trust expected by the society and delivered by the profession. And for this, I welcome our past presidents, CA Amarjit Chopra ji, CA Mukundem Chitray ji, CA Kamlesh Vikamse ji, and CA Dr. Devashish Mitra ji. We also have benefit of presence of our Vice President, CA Ranjit Kumar Agarwal, Chairman AASB, CA Sanjeev Goyal, Sanjeev Singhal, and also the Financial and Tax Literacy Man, CA Abhay Chhaje. So with this background, let us now commence the discussion. Now, may I request Sanjeev Singhal ji to offer opening remarks.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar Chitle ji. Sir, in fact, it is indeed a matter of great pleasure and pride that a subject of auditing, on which normally the number of programs and the number of attendees are not much. In the basically the 5 months of this council year, it is the 100th program of AASB. Great. And we thought it to be deemed fit that we invite the torch bearers of the AASB who have gone on to become the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And we invited 5 past presidents who are not a member of this council. And of course, one of the illustrious vice president of AASB, the vice chairman of AASB became the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, CA Dr. Devashish Mitra ji. Sir, we named this program as Journey of Trust, Enhancing the Trust Quotient. And I'll briefly take you through what's been the journey of the Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. Sir, ICAI, in fact, friends, all of you know that ICAI was formed by an Act of Parliament in 1949. And then initially Auditing Practices Committee was constituted to review the auditing practices and develop statement on standard auditing practices in 1982. And then in 2008, basically the landmark came when the AASB converged all the international standard on auditing and issued the standards on auditing. In between, in 1955, when the research committee was there, that used to formulate the auditing standard in India, and this Auditing Practices Committee was renamed as Auditing and Assurance Standard Board in the year 2002. The torch bearers of the AASB starts right from CA AC Chakravarti ji, our honorable past president, and then it is the baton shifted to CA Bhaskar Banerjee ji, CA Bhayan Kale ji, honorable past president, Dr. R.C. Vash, C.S.C. Vasudeva, C.S.S. Bandari, and then again we have CMM Chitle ji, our honorable past president, CA N.V. Iyer, CA Dipankar Chatterjee, CA A.C. Shah, CA N.V. Iyer, and then CA H.N. Motiwala, CA Kamlesh Vikamse ji, our honorable past president, C.S. Gopala Krishnan, CA N. Nityananda, CA Amarjit Chopra ji, our honorable past president, CA Sunil Goyal, CA Harinderjeet Singh, CA Abhijit Bandyopadhyay, CA Shamlal Agarwal, CA G. Shekhar, and now I have that responsibility. Sir, 1982 to 1983 and 2001-2, there have been 13 chairmen and 10 vice chairmen. 1982 to 83 till date, 6 past chairmen and 4 past vice chairmen have served as the president of ICAI. And 2000 to 2003 till date, AASB had 9 chairmen and 12 vice chairmen who contributed to where we are. If I had to talk about the evolution of standards, from 82 to 2002, we had statement on standard auditing practices, used to be called as SSAP. And from 2002 to 2008, we have auditing and assurance standard, AA. S, and from 2008 onwards, we have named them as standards on auditing. AASB standards have gone global. ICAI, as we know, is one of the founder member of IFAC, and AASB considers standards issued by the IAASB, and with due consideration, adopt or adapt with the international standard on auditing, with limited modifications as may be required in the interest of the profession. The key objectives and functions of AASB are review of the existing and emerging auditing practices, identification of areas in which standards can be issued, formulate new or revise engagement and quality control standards, formulate new and review existing guidance note, formulate the other non-authoritative literature, and of course, do the capacity building programs. In this year and in the last year, since I had the baton of AASB, we've been focusing on the research initiatives, basically working on the standards, coming out with the technical publications, announcements, publications. In the dissemination of knowledge, we are doing awareness program. Today's program is the 100th program for this council year. We are focusing on digital learning. We are focusing on virtual learning, information sharing, and hand-holding the members. When I say hand-holding the member, we actually mean it. From last 3 years, we are running an expert panel on the bank audit related queries. And from last 2 years, we are running a panel whereby the statutory audit related queries of the members are answered, and both these services are without a fee. We've been contributing at the international platform. We've been submitting comments on the exposure draft of the standard, discussion paper, consultation paper, etc., and participating in the IAASB meeting. And of course, we interact with the regulators, whether it is NFRA, SFIO, Security Exchange Board of India, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and the other relevant regulators. As far as the standards are concerned, AASB has been issuing standard on quality control, standards on auditing, standards on assurance engagement, standards on review engagements, and standards on the related services. On technical publication, we have guidance notes, technical guides, implementation guides, FAQs on standard, and industry-specific guide. I give you 2 examples where recently, path-breaking work was done. One was on the digital assurance. Digital assurance is an area where SEBI was very keen that it comes out with a publication and a guide on the digital assurance. So DAB and AASB worked on this publication, and now SEBI in the immediate future intends to make digital assurance mandatory for certain class of listed companies. Similarly, the work on the KPIs, which was done on the key performance indicator audit of the same, was again done on the request of the Security Exchange Board of India, and that was done particularly for the new age technology company who are coming out with the IPOs. And then we also came out with a technical guide on the audit trail. So these have been very contemporary topics on which AASB has issued the technical guides. And from time to time, we come out with the announcements or the clarifications. On the dissemination of knowledge, we are doing both the webinar, seminar, conferences, and train the trainers, digital learning through Digital Learning Hub. And in the World Congress of Accountant, we have set up a stall where questions were asked on the various auditing standards. And of course, the webcasts are done and queries are resolved. We also brought out the revised edition of the guidance note on audit of banks. And recently, we've come out with a checklist on standards of auditing and the working paper templates, which the members can actually use while doing the audit. These are given both in the Word format as well as in the PDF format. So member can actually do a hands-on use of the same. And now we are working another very important initiative on a balance confirmation portal along with the Indian Banking Association. And this portal will be owned by the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. Auditors will not be charged any fee by the banks or the IBA for balance confirmation. Balance confirmation will be digitally available, and the banks will take a responsibility for the accuracy of the same. This will provide a lot of relief, a lot of comfort to our auditors. And recently, AASB has finalized 7 auditing standards, the exposure draft for which is in the process of issuance. These are SQM 1, 2, SA 220 revised, SA 250, SA 315, SA 540, and SRS 4400 revised, and these will be exposed in 45 days comment period will be given. We are also undertaking a project of formulating detailed guidance in respect of the references received from the Quality Review Board and working on the format of the assurance on the digital assurance. So these have been the activities of the Institute in brief, and it's really a momentous occasion when so many torchbearers of the Institute are here with us to share their knowledge and perspective on enhancing the trust quotient. Before I move to the galaxy of the past presidents and the current vice president, my finance and tax literacy chairman, C. Abhay Chajarji is here, who's doing a remarkable work. May I request him to speak for a few minutes on the subject?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chairman AASB Sanjeev Singhal and highly respected the Vice President of ICAI, Rajiv Kumar Agarwal ji, the immediate past President, Dr. C. Devashish Mitra, and of course, like Sanjeev mentioned, that see on the screen the torch bearers, and at some point of time have got opportunity to share dials, interact, and truly an honor that I see Kamlesh Vikamse ji, Chitle ji, and Chopra sir. It's truly an honor, and I believe Sunil Goyal ji also had joined. But I don't see him on the screen, but I think he joined and he should be there. So it's truly an honor that to see all of you here. And I think what Sanjeev mentioned, that it's the journey of trust, and we've seen the list of chairmen of AASB and the vice chairman, when somewhere or the other the torch bearers who've been the past presidents have been the chairman or the vice chairman. So I think the journey of trust has been very long, and I think it still continues, and a lot of work which this board has done, I think, is tremendous. And I think these the presentation which I just saw, and I've been part of some of the groups where knowledge dissemination was there, certain guidance note which have been issued on banks, the implementation guide on audit trail, the research activities, and more particularly the digital initiative which this board has taken this year. Too important, of course, the standards on auditing checklist, which I think it's truly a very useful checklist which has been published by AASB, and now it's available to every members in practice and even members in service, because this is both available in the Word format and in the PDF. I think it's very useful tool. And then the audit tool which has been initiated during the bank audit, the Excel tool which was available for the members while doing the audit of banks, I think, and some of the other initiative which this board has taken. So compliments to the chairman and of course the vice chairman, and under the leadership of vice president, president, and immediate past president, a lot of initiatives have been taken, and I'm sure more initiatives would be taken up by this board. I compliment, and compliments to chairman and entire member of the board, and very happy to see, I would say, all the torch bearers right in front of me, all of them being here today, sparing their valuable time. Sir, thank you so much. And once again, I compliment to Sanjeev Bhai and entire team of the board for doing a lot of work and ensuring the trust is maintained and would continue to maintain among the fraternity. And like he mentioned, being the convener of the financial and tax literacy group, trying our best to do a lot of initiative in finance and tax literacy to reach out to not just members and students, but every citizen of the country, that to ensure that we are the partners in nation building, which has been given to us, to ensure that every citizen is made financially and tax literally aware, and they know what the real role of chartered accountant is. So thank you, Sanjeev Bhai, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Bhai. Thank you. And I pass on your compliments to my vice chairman, who is actually on a student-related mission. He's addressing a student conference, otherwise he would love to be here. May I now invite our immediate past president, CA Dr. Devashish Mitra ji. Apart from his so many achievements, one distinction which will be known forever was to organize the first ever World Congress of Accountant in India, it was historic, and then it was made carbon neutral also. We know his passion for sustainability. We know his passion for IFRS, but now we know his passion for dancing as well. So with this background, may I now invite CA Dr. Devashish Mitra to basically give his remarks and his views on enhancing the trust quotient, the topic under discussion, and about AASB. Over to you.
Thank you very much, CA Dr. Sanjeev Singhal, the Chairman of Audit and Assurance Standards Board, the Honorable Vice President of the Chartered Accountants of India, Ranjit Agarwal, very hardworking. We see him working, right from the morning till the evening. We see working hard for the betterment of the profession. Abhay Chhajer, who's doing so well. He also incidentally happens to be the Vice Chairman of Accounting Standards Board. And you see, people whom I have admired for years after years. Kamlesh becomes a Chitle sir, Amarjit Chopra ji, Sunil Goyal ji, people, whom, from the time I became, in the field, have been practicing, I've been seeing them, listening to them, being influenced by them. It's been, such a great pleasure and privilege being with all of you. This time on the 1st of July, the Honorable President of India inaugurated our 75 years celebration. And we got a new logo. And the logo talks about 75 years of trust. Because when the logo was being designed, and I was told by the President and Vice President that they were looking around for a word which would resonate with the whole profession, not only in India, but abroad. And everybody felt that trust was the most important word. And at the Institute, those of us who are here, still in the council, we believe, and we strongly believe, if the profession has to survive, the trust in the services that we provide is of utmost importance. And when I talk about trust, I also am reminded of the excellent services provided over the years, the excellent efforts provided over the years by Audit and Assurance Standards Board. It is my 8th year in the council. There were 2 years when I was the Vice Chairman of Audit and Assurance Standards Board, and saw the kind of contribution that this board has made over the years. Let me tell you, bank audit. The guidance note on bank audit that this board prepares. Without that, I think you cannot really do bank audit. And I know how much effort every chairman takes to ensure that that bank audit guidance note is of the highest order. Today we talk about audit. And I thank Chopra sir when he has quoted me in his article in the July issue that I said that audit is a serious business. Right. So audit is actually a serious business today. Now, many of us, we think that reasonable assurance, we are not giving absolute assurance. We are giving a reasonable assurance. So why so many people are after us? And when I talk about the reasonable assurance, look at the importance of these 3 standards, auditing standards that we have, SS 700, SS 705, and SS 706. The importance of these standards. And let me tell you, these standards, I have seen the council debate on these standards. As to whether, SS 700, the opinion paragraph should come on top. I have seen that happening in front of my own eyes. That the opinion paragraph, the basis of opinion coming on top. Because we said that, once nobody reads the whole report, we must know what exactly is the opinion. When you're talking about the emphasis of matters, or if you think of qualifying, which over a period of time, when I came into the council, we used to speak about qualification. Now it has become modification. Right? So when we are talking about modification, we cannot really forget SS 705. But the SS 705, over a period of time, the Audit and Assurance Standards Board has worked so hard at it. Today, see, we are expected to be fraud catchers, right? So you see, people, they say that, why don't you catch all the frauds? And if you look at the Companies Act, it has a separate section on fraud, section 143, subsection 12. But the institute and with people like Sanjeev Singhal, you see, we had a standard on fraud, is a 240 for a long time. And this standard on fraud has stood the test of time. And because of these kind of standards that you have had, the trust that the stakeholders, the nation had on the profession is, I believe, still there. Of course, we have so much more to do. And you see, it is a journey that we have to travel. But a journey that all of us, all the 32 council members, led by the president and vice president, and of course the chairman of Audit and Assurance Standards Board, and guided by all of you. You see, a journey that we travel with a huge amount of passion, so that as to ensure that the flag of the institute is kept flying very high. But as we travel this journey, we see some, newer opportunities, newer offshoots. For example, those of us we came in with audit and assurance standards, into the way back in 2016 when we came into the council. But then in 2020, in came the thought of sustainability reporting standard. And we were told it is not only the financial reporting which is important, but it is the non-financial reporting which is also important. And Sanjeev Singhal, who is the chairman of Audit and Assurance Standards Board, at that time he took up the responsibility of ensuring that the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board also goes ahead and does things. So see, the institute is evolving. Can you believe it? We have a guidance note on greenhouse emission. So we have so many things that we have done. Here they're talking about the World Congress. World Congress, you see, when we did it, and so all of you were there, one of the things that we're talking about is, can we make it carbon neutral? And we went ahead and we did it carbon neutral. So that's what we did. So you see, trust is a word which is so very important in the corridors of the Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. It was important when many of you were the presidents, and it is still important. But today, if you are entering the institute, you will find, in addition to trust, 3 other words which have stood the test of time are also being displayed at the entrance of the institute: independence, integrity, and excellence. Words with which all of you are so conversant. Right? So let me tell those who are listening to us that the institute is doing everything possible to see that the trust in the profession, it goes up year after year. Every day that the trust in the profession goes up. Now, when today we know technology is changing the way we do things. ChatGPT has come. You see, ChatGPT might one day give us an audit report. Right? So what Sanjeev Singhal was saying, you see, when SEBI wanted guidance on digital assurance, it was the institute which provided that. And let me tell you, it was well appreciated. So the institute is doing everything possible to merge audit and assurance with technology. We are not looking at audit and assurance only separately. We know audit and assurance is part of the Companies Act today. But we're doing everything possible to push it amongst the membership. To make the membership aware of something as basic as SQC, the standard on quality control. So with the guidance of all the past presidents here, with the leadership of the president and the vice president, you see, with the presence of council members like Sanjeev Singhal and Abhay Chajit, you see, the institute, let me tell you, continues its journey to ensure that the flag of the profession is kept flying very high, and the flag of the country is kept flying very high, and that trust is one word which still remains important in the corridors of the institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your emphasis on these 3 keywords which we've been saying: again and again, excellence, independence, and integrity. Thank you so much, sir. May I now take the opportunity to turn to our Honorable Vice President, CA Ranjit Agarwal ji. CA Ranjit Agarwal ji has discharged many responsibilities at the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, be it the Tax Audit Quality Review Board, members in Industry and Business, Ethical Standard Board, under which the Code of Ethics was revised. But then there is one measure which for which he will always be remembered and is always remembered, that is UDIN. UDIN has been followed now, by the various wings of the government and outside India as well. As the Honorable Immediate Past President said, the Vice President works very hard, and he's the first one to come to the institute and the last one to leave in the day. So the leadership of the institute is in safe hands, and I invite him for his comments on the subject.
Thank you very much, Chairman AASB Sanjeev Singhal ji. We have very respected immediate past president here, Devasis Mitra ji, Abhay Chhajar, and four leaders of our profession, our guardian, and under whose guidance this institute has come up where we are today. Amarjit Chopra ji, Chitlesh sir, Kamlesh Vikamse, and Sunil Goyal, and all the members who are watching this webinar. Good evening to all of you. A very important topic in the 75th year of existence of ICAI and 100th CPE Programme chosen by this chairman of the AASB, Sanjeev Bhai, how to enhance the trust quotient. As far as this trust is concerned, I have defined this trust like T for truthfulness, R for respect, U for utility, S for service, and T for time tested. These 5 words, if you resonate with the qualification of the chartered accountant, we always used to say the 2 alphabets of trust is a CA. So last 75 years, these 5 words or 5 letters of trust has equally resonated with the services provided by the chartered accountant of this country. When this 1st of July, our President of India was there, so we had discussed one important aspect that when this country got independent in 1947, the country felt how to augment the revenue of the country, how various standards should be set up, how the financial discipline should come in this country. And that point of time, our forefather thought there cannot be a better body than the Institute of Chartered Accountant India at that point of time. And within next 2 years, they have set up, or ICAI was born in 1949. Mind you, that point of time, IIT or IIMs were not there. They were far from existence. And the only professional they relied on that point of time were chartered accountants. So the chartered accountants from 1949 are enjoying the word of trust, the value of trust, and the kind of respect and the kind of trust the people of this country has reposed on the chartered accountant. So this trust word is from the beginning, on the birth of the CA is there. And we have seen in the journey of the last 75 years, if India is today where we are, in last 75 years, whatever we have achieved, $3.5 trillion economy, 7% growth, youngest population, the kind of financial system we have, we are one of the best financial system of the world in India. The kind of banking transaction we have, we are one of the finest, lowest, and the fastest, considering the other countries of the world. In India, when we go abroad, we see the kind of robust disciplinary mechanism the institute has as a professional body. No other professional organization has this kind of robust disciplinary mechanism. So we have come a long way under the leadership of our leaders who are on the screen in last 75 years by maintaining the letter of trust. But at the same time, as we have 2 very important boards in this institute, Accounting Standard Board and Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. Accounting Standard Board used to be a standard which are input standard, which are used by the corporates by framing the financial, and the auditing standards are the output standards, which are used by the auditor to certify the financial. So both these pillars of accounting and auditing, in which our members are doing as a chartered accountant in practice and chartered accountant in industry, by maintaining the various corporate to that level where these corporates are today in India. These two people are praiseworthy. They are doing a phenomenal job in last 75 years. So now the challenge today have, since you have raised this issue of trust on the 75th year, we as a fraternity, under the guidance of our leader who are on the screen, we have to introspect the trust we have maintained in last 75 years and what should be our role and the responsibility for next 25 years. What should be our roadmap of maintaining this trust, and how this institute, with the parameters of these two letters of trust, can contribute in the growth and development of this country, which this country can see in 2047 as a developed nation, whether we as a ICI next 25 years, in 2049, can we proudly say that whatever India is today, whatever the country is growing, the contribution of chartered accountant cannot be undermined. We have equally contributed in the growth and development of this country. So I think we have a larger responsibility on our soldier, so that our young generation who are coming behind, they can proudly say, yes, this is the institute who has done something great for this country. And we have the capacity, we have the capability. The accounting, auditing followed by the ethical standards we have, the kind of financial discipline we have in this country, this institute, I am confident, can do a lot of good work. They can guide the country, and they can also guide the entire accounting and auditing profession of this world as a whole. That is my belief. That is the confidence I have. And with the support of everybody, we can achieve this target. I wish Sanjeev Bhai very, very great, and thank you very much for raising this very, very important, because the topic we discuss every day, but these kind of discussion rarely happen. And it's a time to discuss this word. What is the trust? What we are doing? What roadmap we can do? What more we can do? So that our students, who are 8 lakh students, they should know what this institute is and what you will do once you become a charter, and why you should be a charter accountant. What you will get as a degree or as a responsibility to participate in the growth and development of this country. So only job or a practicing license is not enough. You are doing more than that. In addition to your livelihood, you are proudly contributing in the growth and development of this country. That kind of trust in 8 lakh students should be there, so that they can become a member and make this country forward. Thank you very much for making this program on such a nice topic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And the way you explain trust, which stands for truthfulness, respect, utility, service, and time tested. Hats off to you. And as the immediate past president said, we are celebrating 75 years of trust, 75 saal Vishwas ke, and that is why we chose this topic. Thank you so much. And we are sure that under your leadership, the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India will scale new heights. Thank you so much, sir. With this, may I now invite CA Dr. Amarjit Chopra ji for his views on this topic of enhancing the trust quotient. Amarjit Chopra sir has served the institute for more than 2 decades, and he served as the president of the institute for 2010-11. He has been a member of almost every standing and non-standing committee, and he has chaired some of the most important committees. And probably he has the distinction, and there will be very few distinction to chair both Accounting Standard Board as well as the Auditing Standard Board, the input and the output, as was mentioned by the Honorable Vice President. Amarjit Chopra sir has been the chairman of NACAS. He is currently a member of NFRA
And of course, he has been contributing in the Accounting Research Foundation. He is a prolific writer and speaker, and he has been guiding the membership on various topics ranging from accounting standards to auditing standards to ethics to corporate law, etc. His contribution to the fraternity is immense, and it is indeed a pleasure that he has taken out time, though he is overseas, for guiding the member on the subject. Sir, may I now invite you for your guidance on the subject.
Thank you, Sanjeev ji, and of course, my greetings to the Honorable Vice President of the Institute, Ranjit Agarwal ji, immediate past President Devashish ji, Babet Hajar ji, and of course, my seniors in the presidentship, Mukund Chitle ji, Kamlesh Vikamse ji, Sunil Goyal ji, and of course, all the people who have joined this particular program. You see, trust is a very, very important and a very significant word. And it's a very onerous word if you really ask me. It means somebody reposes confidence in you. Somebody has a sense of satisfaction in whatever you do. Somebody believes in you. And it is this trust which cannot be belied. It is this trust, when reposed in us, under no circumstances. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
It is this kind of trust which under no circumstances will let it go. And when I talk of the trust in these words, basically, we all need to understand our functioning is directed towards whom? Is it only the shareholders? Is it towards the various stakeholders? To my mind, when we talk of the trust has to be for the larger part of the society. I think it is towards the society. I am so glad that the Honorable Vice President has given 2 words today, input and output analysis. We always try to do it in the inventories, basically when it comes to the raw material and the finished product. So you said one time when we look at the financial statements unaudited, these are the raw materials. When these come out as audited, these become the finished goods, basically. The quality of which has to be ensured. And when the quality of the financial statements has to be ensured, it automatically means that anybody, whether these are the tax authorities, this is the government, this is the public, this is the banker, these are the creditors, these are the staff members. To me, even the reposing of the trust in the financial statements of the staff is very, very important. For them, it is a matter of stake, basically. Their lifetime stake, their sustainability is all dependent upon the work that we do. Now, to my mind, in the recent times, whatever, I will talk some reality also, besides, of course, whatever has happened. I think if I look at the number of the cases which are before the insolvency, under the insolvency before the NCLT, we need to start doing a lot of self-introspection as a profession. And as I said at many occasions, we need to actually study all these things. I am not saying that all the NCLT cases are because of certain wrong things which have been done. These could be genuine business failures also. But then, if on an average, a bank is taking a haircut of 70%, I think we need to do a lot of self-introspection. We need to work on it. Either ARF or the research committee of the institute need to undertake this particular project as to why this has happened over the years. And this is one reason where certain trust has been eroded. We may or may not agree to that. Because when we are trying to do a lot of self-introspection, when we are talking of the trust, I think we need to really talk of the ground realities also under those circumstances. And we have to rebuild that trust to an extent. And I personally feel the trust quotient, even between the auditor and the client, is very important. We all always speak of the trust quotient between the public and the auditor. we need to talk of the trust quotient between the client and the auditor. Today, even that particular trust quotient between the two is gone. If I look at one of the resignations in the recent times of one of the bigger firms, basically from one of the companies, it may not even be considered to be a listed entity. It may not be public interest entity. I think this clearly shows that there was lack of faith between the client as well as the auditor. The client refused to give some kind of information. The auditor has said in the resignation that they were not being provided the information. And the client has its own way of looking at it. And this is not the first time. It happened 2 years or 3 years back in certain other case also, very frankly. And one of the trust questions which I will definitely like if one of the past presidents can really comment upon it. One of the auditor resigns, saying that the information is not available, there's absolutely no cooperation from the client, or there are certain qualifications or modifications to the report that he wanted to give the auditor, the client is not willing to accept. And the other auditor is immediately able to join. I think this is something which we need to do some kind of a thinking on. Why should we be allowed to jump on an audit assignment which someone has left? I think if this trust quotient is to be built, the institute must take it up with the SEBI or with the MCA or with some other authority, that once the auditor resigns of such a large organization, I think the thresholds can be fixed for that particular matter. In that particular case, this case must go before a particular committee and let the committee look into the allegations of the two sides, the client as well as the auditor. And if the committee feels that the auditor was justified, why the new auditor should be allowed to come in? Let the old auditor continue to work, give his report, whatever report he has to give, and then finish off the audit. That's the way I look at it. The other way to look at it would be that if the auditor and the client are not getting along with it, then he should be allowed to resign and someone should be able to join. I think that destroys the confidence of the public in the profession. So somewhere or the other, I think we must see to it that, and the other thing that one may like to say is, when I talk of the trust quotient, I think the Honorable Vice President has said, and it has been repeated time and again, that we stand on independence, integrity, excellence. Trust is related to all these words. Independence. Now, I think the public believes that the auditor has to be independent, particularly when there are networks, basically, whether these are domestic networks or these are international networks. You keep on working in India for a client as an auditor, and your international network keeps on working somewhere else. I think the independence is jeopardized. When it comes to the public light, I think the trust quotient gets distorted in those cases. Similarly, the integrity. If the auditor or if the chartered accountant has the integrity, I think that trust quotient is much larger. There's no doubt about it. Competence is, of course, very, very important to build a trust. If I think in some of the cases which have been decided by NAFRA recently, it has come to the light that the people who themselves went on to say before NFRA that they did not know anything about Ind AS. How the trust can be built in that particular case? I think whatever I accept, for that I must have the competence. And if I have the competence, the people will have the trust in me. I think that is very important so far as that particular part is concerned. To me, the issues with regard to this trust building, I can lay before the AASB for that matter, or before the institute for that matter, is we start to give guidance on the related party transactions, whether it is only the numerical part or it is only the quantitative part that we have to look at the related party transaction, or we have to look at the arm's length transactions also. I can tell you there's a lot of talk today why all the related party transactions should be on a nomination basis alone, why it should not be based on the tendering. I think this is one of the very important talks which is going on. And actually, it's the fact that all the related party transactions are on the nomination basis. So why should it be that? And then how the arm's length transaction is arm's length basis is being fixed? This is one of the major issues, and all the siphoning of which takes place is through the related party transactions, if you really ask me. So I think the AASB will do well if they can provide guidance on these related party transactions much better. External confirmations is another issue. I'm so glad that the institute has taken it up with the IBA, particularly with regard to the bank confirmations. And there is going to be a joint project. But I think we need to look at 505, SA 505. Whatever we may say, if we give an option that alternate procedures can be applied, and people then say, I applied only the alternate procedures and the external confirmations are not available. I can assure you one thing, sir, that in the times to come, probably, like in Caro, there are a number of things which have come in now. If we don't act, probably someone else will act and will say that you need to give how much external, how many external confirmations have been obtained in terms of the value and the number. I think saying that we circulated the letters is not important. It's more important what is the value of the external confirmation which have been received. That to me, that it will come in the course of time. You can be very sure so far as this particular part is concerned. I think reporting of frauds, NFRA has come out with a circular with regard to the fraud. I personally feel the institute must take it up. It is an overreach. Basically, I said it in a statement also. You can't say that a fraud which has already been reported by someone else also needs to be reported under 143(12) by the auditor. Why? I think it's up to the management to report it to the government, if at all they want to do it. In the Caro, I will report that particular fraud. I will not do it the other way around. And similarly, the going concern, I think we need to provide far more guidance on the going concern if the trust is to be built. Advances in nature of loans, valuation of investments in subsidiaries and joint ventures, actuarial valuations, contingent liabilities, accounting policies, the kind of aggressive policies we have recently seen in which one of the firms have actually resigned has been more because of the aggressive accounting policies that the company had taken. The trust needs to be built, but the trust will be built only once the client and the auditor have the trust, and then of course the work of the auditor will reflect upon the trust that we build for the society as a whole. Trust is something which is far more important than even the competence, if you really ask me. Trust is something which comes from within. Trust is more ethical. I think if the ethics are built, the trust will automatically be built. This is the way I look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Your recipe on the specific items, be it the related party transactions or the confirmations or the advances, is really useful, sir. And it will be our endeavor that whatever falls within the purview of AASB, if the existing guidance is insufficient, we expend the guidance in this respect. Thank you, sir. So we'll be taking up questions at the end. May I now invite our Honorable Past President, CA Kamlesh Vikamseji. Kamlesh Vikamseji was the president of the institute in year 2005-06. He has been the president of CAPA in 2007 to 2009, and he heads many international organizations. He has headed Independent Management Advisory Committee of International Telecommunication Union, Geneva, Switzerland, for 4 years, and he is very closely working with the United Nations. He has been on the Oversight Advisory Committee of the United Nations Population Fund from July 2022. He is in the Audit Committee of the World Meteorological Organization, Geneva, from 1st March 2019 for a period of 3 years. He is also on the Audit Oversight Committee of the World Intellectual Property Organization at Geneva. Thank you so much, sir, for joining this webinar, and may I request for your guidance on the subject. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. Honorable Vice President, C. Ranjit Agarwal, Honorable Past President, Debashish Mitra, Sanjeev Singhal, Chairman, AASB, Thanks a lot for inviting me today in this very important seminar which you're organizing online. And I'm happy to note, Sanjeev, that you have taken it upon yourself. Oh, sorry, I forgot Abhay Chhajar because he was not in the screen. So Abhay Chhajar as well. Sanjeev, I think I'm extremely happy that the ICAI and especially AASB has taken upon itself to not only lay down auditing standards, which it's supposed to do, not only bring out technical, guidances, etc., but also see that these standards are explained to the members at large. I'm extremely happy. And this being the 100th CPE program of the AASB talks volumes about what the Institute is doing in terms of spreading this knowledge of how important the auditing standards are and how important auditing is. And that brings me to the topic for discussion today. How do auditors enhance the reliability of information and gain the stakeholders' trust quotient and confidence with integrity, governance, and audit quality? Now, I want to slightly deviate and take us to the future. I want to talk about the future, the auditing profession future, etc. In the past, the auditing profession in India has done extremely well. In my view, the contribution of the audit profession has greatly enhanced the capital raising in the stock markets, as well as in, say, for example, tax gathering, tax audit, or other kinds of assurances which we provide. We have done extremely well, barring a few aberrations, which would be there in any system. The auditing has really helped the country and nation as a whole. But now let me talk about something which we should, as an institute, as a profession, not only in India, but worldwide, look at. And we are living in this new world of technology, which is disrupting everything, be it businesses, education, you name it, and it's disrupting everything. The inroads of technology in every walk of life is so daunting that we as auditors will have to reimagine our role to be relevant to times. And let me just give you a few, brief macro level changes which are happening, which we can see today. But there are many, many things which we even cannot see today, which we would have to. And the Honorable Vice President talked about, 25 years hence, 50 years hence, imagining the audit profession. And what are the trends today? Cloud computing. Now, cloud computing is a reality. How do we audit records kept in the cloud? How do we test controls on data generated from cloud computing? What tools do we use? How do we ensure fair coverage of transactions for audit? These are questions which come up as far as cloud computing is concerned. And mind you, cloud computing has been accepted not only in businesses, but even the governments and even the international organization. They have embraced cloud computing. And therefore, we as auditors must also be capable or enhance our capabilities for auditing in this new environment of cloud computing. A lot has been talked about artificial intelligence, chat GPT, etc. And automation, where machines are performing tasks. The decisions are also taken by machines based on the software logic which is built, the algorithms which are built. Now, how do you audit such entities? Using AI. As an audit profession as well, I'm sure we will need to develop tools and skills to bring AI into the auditing as well, artificial intelligence. So the auditing profession as a whole will have to really think of how to embrace the AI, artificial intelligence, both as a tool for auditing and even auditing the AI, which businesses are using. That takes me to the next big thing, which is big data sets. Today, the volume of data which is generated and available in any business or any entity which you're auditing is humongous. How does one audit such entities? How does one really, use audit tools in order to collate data, in order to raise red flags in auditing, and in order to see as to out of the sample which one has taken for audit, how does one actually look at those transactions which come out, which are not part of the symmetry and which needs more attention of the auditor. Coming to ESG, Sanjeev, you're doing a very good job on ESG as well. And this is very, very important because not only businesses, not only the nation, but even the nations across the world, everybody is grappled with ESG. And it's a reality. Now, if ESG is embraced by the businesses and by the governments and by the nations, how meaningful are the financial statements which we are auditing? And how meaningful are the disclosures which should capture even the meaningful ESG data? Very important thought must be given to this, because environment, for that matter, environment is such a subject which now it's, we are always going to move forward. We are not going to move back. And the business is also going to embrace it. And we as auditors also should be capable enough to see that how we embrace ESG and how do we audit ESG and how do we give meaningful assurance as far as ESG data is concerned. Blockchain technology. With increase in blockchain technology and its adoption by businesses, again, the auditing profession has to reimagine itself as to how do we look at blockchain, how do we look at the data which is there in blockchain, how do we use tools to audit such data. In a nutshell, if I may sum up, audit profession will have to transform to embrace newer technologies, to keep relevant with ever-changing technologies. The pace of change is so fast that the profession will have to keep pace to be relevant. And we are talking of trust, and therefore, ethics and professional standards are becoming increasingly important for stakeholders in auditing profession, particularly considering the recent audit failures and scams. Auditors will have to demonstrate that they follow high quality standards and avoid any conflicts of interest to best serve their clients and society at large. The future of auditing is an evolving landscape that is being shaped by a range of trends and challenges. Auditors will need to stay ahead of the curve by embracing new technologies, an approach to audit quality and transparency, and by being adaptable to changing businesses and society needs and regulatory environments. I think I must once again compliment the ICAI and the AASB, and especially Sanjeev Singhal, for organizing this seminar today, giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much, and back to you, Sanjeev.
Thank you very much, sir. You spoke about technology, AI, big data. In fact, there are questions on sampling versus testing the entire population. I'm sure that some of these questions will come up from the participants when we take up the questions. But thank you so much, sir, for your guidance on this subject.
May I now invite our next past president, C.S. Sunil Goyalji. Sunil Goyalji was the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India for 2004 and 5, and he served the council for more than 12 years. He has been the member of the board of directors of the IFAC, SMP committee, SMP task force, and various other forums of International Federation of Accountants. He has also been the president of SAFA, and he has also been the ex-committee member of CAPA. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time. And we now request you for your guidance on the trust factor and the role of the chartered accountants in the same. Thank you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you very much. Honorable Vice President, the past presidents on the topic. First of all, my compliments to you, Sanjeev, and the entire team for propagating this topic with such a zeal that the trust quotient, which sometimes get erodes because of the many frauds and more particularly because of wrong reporting and allegations which come in media and because of certain observations that some regulators make. So it has become very, very important to reinforce and of course educate our members, because one cannot say that members were not at fault in any case, also cannot be. No, we see the landscape of our profession, and I'm talking about only auditing landscape. If I talk about the general landscape, it is much, much more vast. But now see, before me, Kamlesh Bhai spoke, Amarjit Bhai spoke, and they highlighted that we used to only financial audit. Now we are talking about ESG, we are talking about social audit, we are talking about environment audit, we are talking about energy audit, we are talking about digital audit. So this all shows that the government is posing more and more thrust in our profession. Now it becomes our solemn duty to honor that trust, prepare our members, and educate and handhold them for discharging their duties. Now we said excellence, independence, integrity. Now these three words are the basic foundation of our profession. So I just touch upon them. I think that get covered automatically. Excellence. No, one can excel when one is expert. One cannot excel when one cannot be expert. One is not expert in the subject. In this light, our profession was very good till the conventional accounting was there. But now with the onslaught of artificial intelligence, with the onslaught of blockchain system, and all new things which are happening, it will be very, very challenging for us to educate our members. So as far as competency is concerned, we need to lay very specific emphasis. And I can see that you are laying it. The digital audit. Digital means audit through computers, audit tools, audit education, using blockchain, using artificial intelligence. Because whenever one gets an opportunity to talk to some organizations who are using big data, so big data is becoming a very big challenge. For tackling with the big data, our members has to be very conversant about the technology and how to use the technology. If you see the banking sector, particularly a big private bank, they have used technology in such a manner that unless our members are very, very competent and conversant with the technology, the trust for their competence will not be there. No, that competence we have to prepare. From now, we see that government has also mandated about the making audit trails. So when we see that audit trails is made mandatory, that means government recognizes that almost every company, I'm saying almost every company, is on some software. So when softwares are there and audit trails is mandated by the MCA, I think auditing through that will become very, very important and very, very easier. Now, when we talk about this thing, the second question comes about independence. Now, independence of auditors is still an issue which we have been grappling with since very long time. And there should be some specific discussions with all the regulators that how the appointments can be made in such a manner that while we continue the autonomous position of the client, but some sort of independence is maybe said. I know I am going to lacking, and whenever we used to talk with the regulators, some steps are taken, some other steps are taken, but they are not enough. I would say that. When we talk about the governance in the companies, governance in our own profession, the governance become very, very important is how a company is governed. One has seen that the companies where the audit with ACB, the audit committee is very strong, the governance become good. And when the audit committee becomes strong, the appointments, the independence, the performance also become automatically much better. So I feel that audit committee empowerment, audit committee involvement, and audit committee close interaction with the auditor must be ensured. It is said by us that we commit those charged in governance. Now, those charged in governance communication has become, in many cases, a formal presentation only in the end of the audit. We must emphasize for our members whether they were given option, whether the audit committee approached them before audit, during audit, after audit, whether this was done or this was not done. Because in a way, if we are able to report the interaction of the audit committee with the auditor, then the involvement of the audit committee will automatically be displayed in our audit reports. So like we are saying about frauds, like we are saying about so many things, the interaction with the audit committee must be narrated so that audit committee also becomes live to their responsibility. Believe me, audit committee is very, very important in good governance. In fact, it is primarily the responsibility of the audit committee to ensure the good governance in their organizations. Now, we can play a supporting role. So that role must be jointly done, and it should be ensured that in a suitably form, it is reported in our report. Now, frauds, we all understand that frauds reporting and all that is there. What is more important, perhaps, is to emphasize and educate our members that diversion of funds is a fraud, but diversion of fund in what manner? Now, Amarjit Bhai said about related party transactions. It's a very good suggestion. It is being done before audit committees. Normally, for any big client, before the audit committee, it is presented that what a transaction with the related party. But audit committees at times are not going into detail of those transactions. So diversion of funds, it has to be emphasized that utilization of funds for any purpose other than for what it was obtained may become a diversion of funds. And I will give an example that if a short-term credit is obtained, using that credit for long-term investments or for repaying the long-term loans or serving any long-term objective may not be a diversion of funds as far as the legal thing is concerned, but it will definitely stress on the company and the highly leveraged ultimately and will be short of funds, and it may find difficult to continue its operations. So this must also be kept in mind that this diversion of funds to be very elaborately discussed, some sort of guidance may be more issued, and our members must be taught about this thing that diversion of funds does not only mean that the promoter purchases a house for himself or that the promoter spends the money on some personal habits. Diverter funds also will be there if suppose he starts a subsidy which was not in the business plan when the funds were obtained by him. Because that sort of businesses, when they take place, the money becomes stuck and the debtors, the creditors are not served in time. So that is also very, very important. Another area which I would highlight where the major problems are thrown under the carpet is in the form of contingent liability. Now, contingent liability is one area where very small disclosures are made by the promoter, by the management, and in that manner, the significant things are sometimes not covered, which should have been provided for, which should have been otherwise modified in the report. It is not done. So, special scrutiny, we should train our members, or we should guide our members that they should be doing that scrutiny so that the contingent liabilities are scrutinized in detail, and whatever matters they have to find out from there should be either provided for or should be used in the modification of the report. I'm very sure that some sort of handholding, some sort of education to our members, particularly of those who are auditing listed entities, will be going in a long way. Now, also we touched upon valuation, actuaries. Now, I had an interaction with in one committee, and it was explained by that some person with the insurance industry that actuary valuation is sacrosanct and one cannot touch the actuary valuation. Now, this idea basically is wrong, and we have to educate our member that up to what level, up to what thing we can check about the actual valuation. We are not checking about their statistical table. We are checking about the accuracy of data. We are checking about the assumptions. We are checking with the basic concept and the basic common sense, whatever we can apply. So no figure should be accepted as a sacrosanct figure by the members. Now that brings me immediately on the topic of skepticism. There is one area of skepticism which perhaps need to be more sharpened. One feels that the skepticism has reduced in some faculties, in some quarters, where whatever has been given has been accepted, and the approach becomes only box ticking that yes, we have obtained. Reading, correlating, and counter checking those details so that the skepticism is kept alive. So one where I will say that we put up some trust is skepticism, and how I mean even we can teach our members in what circumstances one should have been skeptical where one was not. So if these type of case studies are made, I think it can be illustrated more interestingly to the members. This thing will be nice. Now, the good thing is that more and more things are being digitized. Accounting, auditing, audit trail, SAP programs, I mean ERPs. So in all those programs, the jugglery or the manipulation by the management will become more and more difficult, which will be very good for a true and fair reporting by our profession. And I'm sure that that will increase the quality of audit, increase the quality of financial reporting, increase the trust quotient in our of the stakeholders. If you can see that the economy, what it has become today, we are going to fight economy. Now that economy cannot be achieved unless our profession equally responds, because whatever money is coming, whether in the form of whether from India, statements, and that becomes very, very significant that we live up to the faith, the trust which has been posed in by the regulators and the public. I'm sure, and I really compliment that ICAI is doing a lot and the AASB is doing a lot, and you have been taking a lot of pains. And with these things, I think I will conclude my talk, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the last whenever somebody has any questions. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance on the subject, and particularly when you talked about the actuarial valuation, sir. You are very right that our auditing standard is very clear while saying that you can rely on the work of an expert, but the auditor remains responsible for his audit report. So the auditor has every right to go through the judgments and the assumptions and ask his questions. Thank you so much. With this, may I now turn to our Honorable past President, CA MM Chetleji, who was the President of the ICAI in 1997 and 98, who has been the Chairman of NACAS, and he has over 4 decades of experience on advising companies on their business, financials, and the strategic matter. He is the Chairman of the Standing Committee on Accounting Issues constituted by the IRDA and a member of the Primary Market Advisory Committee of the Security Exchange Board of India. And is also connected with various social organizations. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind presence. And may I now request for your guidance on this subject. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I think it's a very nice thing to participate in a program which is organized by the Institute. The Audit and Assurance Board has been a committee which has, I think, helped me a lot. I think I must put it on the record that the membership of this committee and the chairmanship of this committee taught me auditing really well. So I think it's a great sense of feeling to participate in a program like this. Coming straight to the subject, I think the topic given is trust, and all of us are trying to discuss about those subjects. So let me take a few direct issues on which all of us connected with the Institute and connected with auditing will have to look at. I think the first and foremost I would suggest is the accounting and auditing are really 2 sides of the same coin. One will have to depend on the other. The audit will have to depend on accounting. And to that extent, if accounting is the language of communicating results of business, then in today's world, we know that the actual language itself is becoming impure. And to that extent, the accounting also seems to be becoming impure. And if the accounting is impure, the auditing also will suffer to that extent. So I think that's the first problem, which is on a conceptual basis. The next is the ownership of these standards. Now, accounting standards, the industry will have to take the ownership. Now, all of us connected with the Institute will have to think of how do we make that happen? Because unless the industry feels ownership of the accounting standards, they really implement it because the law requires them to do that, or the CA Institute has required them to do that. Now, why I'm talking so much on accounting standards is, at least those are the standards where non-compliance becomes measurable or visible to some extent. In auditing standards, the non-compliance becomes visible only when a major issue arises. Until that time, nothing is visible. The next topic that comes to my mind is, collectively, the audit profession has not been able to understand how to deal with failures. Let us take a few of the commercial failures in the country in the last few years. Whenever there has been a failure, consequence is that the auditors will be blamed, the audit profession will be blamed, and some new law or some amendments to the law will take effect. Can we not have a research paper or a study which brings out whether the failure was the result of an individual or a firm or an organization not complying with the standards, or whether the standards themselves were found to be wanting or deficient? If you look at our auditing standards for the last so many years, if the auditing standards have remained same, it is very clear that the standards were competent enough to deal with the situation. It was a failure of somebody in the field who could not implement the standards properly. I think if this issue is brought out, the beating which the CA Institute gets for every failure would normally change, because then we are very clearly bringing out that the rules of the game laid down by the standards are very clear. And I think that's what we need to do more clearly. Another thought which comes to the mind is a fraud detection is a topic which is talked about very regularly across, and this has been a topic for years together. If the society expects that the auditors should bring out the fraud, they should report on this very quickly. Maybe a study would be useful at the institute level, maybe Accounting Research Foundation, that tomorrow, I'm just saying hypothetically, if fraud detection is the primary responsibility of the auditor, what are the things that the audit will have to do? What is the consequence on the time element which will be required? And what is the cost of compliance of this kind of reports? I think this kind of study can only bring out the impracticality of the demand, which is stating that every audit must bring out every fraud. I think somewhere or the other, we'll have to face this issue with upfront courage to say that whether it is practical to do this or whether it is only theoretical to keep on talking about this subject. If this is not done, this is going to be a useful tool in the hands of those who want to criticize the audit profession, and this will continue to happen. The recent circular of NAFRA is just an illustration of the same topic. The next thing which comes to the mind is, and this may not be actually related to audit, but I think the constant changes in accounting standards which happen every year, actually to me is a problem area. And I'll just take one example. The latest change brought in the accounting standard, which says that from the next year, instead of disclosing the significant accounting policies, the companies will have to disclose material accounting policy information. Now, what this means can be an area of debate by itself, but let us understand very clearly that this is going to be a fundamental change, and whenever the rules are changed so suddenly, it becomes as if the goalpost itself is changing. The accounting standards are not that easy to be understood very easily. If the people in the industry and the audit profession itself finds it difficult to get adapted to the new situation, what do we expect the public at large to look at them? So I think there has to be some time period where the accounting standards are allowed to remain constant, and maybe changes are made only after every 2 years or 3 years. I think constant changes is never good for the credibility of the financial statements over a period of time. The next point which comes to mind is the off-balance sheet items. I think the point which Sunil made about contingent liabilities is a case in point. If there are major items which remain off balance sheet, tomorrow they are going to be a bombshell at some place. Few specific issues which come to mind is, one is a bank audit. A bank audit is a major source of area of work for the entire profession. However, one single weakness which I find in our present bank audit is the coordination between the central statutory auditors and the bank branch auditors. Whenever you talk to central statutory auditors, somehow they keep saying that the branch audit is not done that well. And when you talk to the branch auditors, they feel that we do such a good audit, but the central auditors are not taking care of what we are writing. I think there has to be a mechanism by which the central statutory auditors who feel that the branch audit is not done properly should be able to communicate in a proper manner and ensure that the bank branch audit is actually done properly if they really feel that it is not done properly. Because I think it is this kind of discussions which is leading the regulators to believe that this is one area which should get out of the way. And therefore, the bank branch audit might become an area of past if we do not attend to this subject very, very quickly. Two other specific things which come to mind is a standard in auditing on written representation, SA 580. Now, if you look at the standard, more or less it says that the management would give representation. But I would say, with the amendment of the Companies Act 2014, It is the entire board which has become responsible for the financial statements. And therefore, we may have to really look at this standard seriously to see whether the representation is to be taken by the management, rather from the management, or is it a higher level from which the representation has to come. Now, this might require some more study, but I would suggest that this is something which is essential for us technically. And the last point I would take is the orders issued by NAFRA. When one looks at the orders issued by NAFRA, apart from the circular which has been issued, I think they keep on talking about how the audit standards are to be implemented. Now, in case the CA Institute believes that that's the correct interpretation of the implementation of auditing standards, then one has to really find out, are we really actually implementing the auditing standards in the manner in which the NAFRA order talks about? Let us not talk about a particular firm or an individual or a particular problem. I think that is not the job to be done here. But the manner in which the auditing standards are to be implemented, if the Audit and Assurance Board of the Institute or the Council itself believes that the implementation of the auditing standards is slightly different than what it is being brought out, I think there has to be a dialogue between NAFRA and the Institute, and some lead has to be taken in this area. Otherwise, this is going to be an area which will be found to be very, very practically difficult by most of the auditing people who are in practice. Our standards on SQC1 is so good that I would request that there has to be an implementation manual to be brought out by the AASB, because the standard is so good in theory that to put it in practice really needs some support from the experts. And the last point I would say is accounting or auditing, the ethics can never get out of it. Only when the ethics is supporting accounting and auditing, this will lead to accountability. And when accounting will lead to accountability, that itself can lead to credibility. I think all of us who are a part of the audit profession will have to work collectively. And I think the Institute, through the Council, will have to take the support of outside people, members of the Institute and members of the public, to ensure that we maintain the trust quotient as we are talking about. With the help of those who can do the things, let's do it collectively. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me on this occasion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. The pleasure is of the Institute and the Auditing Standard Board and mine for your very enlightening words. Sir, one point on the SQC, let me tell you that very recently, the Center for Audit Quality of the Institute has come out with a firm manual which talks about implementation of SQC. So that has been resolved, sir. Similarly, an Excel tool for materiality has also been brought out, that how to apply materiality, and you put the situation and the relevant inputs, and that will tell you what is the performance materiality and the tolerable error and the SAD part, the summary of audit differences. Thank you so much, sir. With this, may I now invite our Honorable Past President, YM Kaleji. Sir was the basically the president of the Institute in 95-96, and he has been a member of the council from 1982 to 1998. He has been commemorated by ICAEW in a publication of 11 chosen members from India. Sir has been a senior partner AF Ferguson and Company. He has been the member of International Accounting Standards Board and a member of task force which drafted the International Accounting Standard on Segment Reporting. He has also been with the Government of India in the National Drugs and Pharmaceutical Development Council, Working Group on Drug Pricing and Procedure, and has been in the RBI group for introduction of concurrent audit of banks, and the DBOD working group on revised format for published accounts in banks. He has been on the SEBI committee on accounting for corporate, takeover, offer document, and the primary markets. Thank you so much, sir. Despite your busy schedule, you spared your time to come for this webinar. and to guide our members on the subject. May I now request, sir, for your kind guidance.
Yes. Recent surveys and articles having reported declining levels of trust in the credibility of financial and related information, the profession is naturally concerned in restoring societal access to reliable fact-based information. The question posed in the ICAI email inviting my participation is, how do auditors enhance the reliability of information and gain stakeholders' trust? Clearly, the way forward is to examine before acceptance of any work, whether it be an attestation, an assessment of controls, a wider assurance, whether we possess the necessary competence in terms of domain knowledge relevant to the assignment, having regard to nature, size, and processes of particular trade or industry vertical. This challenge of ensuring adequate competence and sector-wise insight is a prerequisite for rendering value-added service and is the cardinal factor that enhances trust. Essentially, it mandates acquiring data skills and consequential insights. These skills assist in accessing data, cleaning it up, and standardizing the same. With these skills, capturing lost ground is a realistic possibility. The good news is that computer-focused data analytical auditing, embellished by generative artificial intelligence AI solutions, is now available to deliver these skills. Such solutions include machine learning, ML, natural language processing, NLP, and robotic automation, RPA, to mention only three. So it may be useful to devote the minutes allotted to me in sharing thoughts on how these could help us review the information upon which we issue our opinions and assurances so that reporting enhances trust. Let's take up machine learning. ML uses algorithms and statistical models to identify and predict patterns in large data sets that has the capacity to adapt. ML lends itself to address three mandatory challenges: analyzing financials, predicting trends, and identifying potential hazards. For example, in assessing provisioning of doubtful debts, ML would better equip auditors to spot the likelihood of customer default as also the lending pitfalls. Fraud detection, which has long been a controversial area affecting the trust quotient, can benefit from a paradigm uplift given new ML capacities to go beyond typical human analysis, with ML highlighting potential areas for further scrutiny and helping tackle frauds proactively. ML comparisons of actuals with budgets and forecasts would be a deterrent to last-minute adjustments in financial statements. Adequacy of tax provisioning will be better monitored through automation of compliance processes and the ML ability to identify liabilities, deductions, errors, and omissions. Turning to natural language processing, NLP allows computer recognition of meaning behind words and interpretation of text-based unstructured data as well as spoken words. This will reduce need for manual reviews by identifying and analyzing anomalies in the books of account and improve accuracy of auditing processes by linkages between structured trial balances and narratives in notes to accounts that describe policies and treatments. Compliance monitoring of the filing of statutorily required documents and the adherence to legal requirements may be largely automated in due course, minimizing penalties. Tools leveraging NLP will help the auditor identify patterns in unstructured information and extract data from long legalese to reduce contractual risks. Needless to say, the foregoing will all help CA practitioners understand client preferences, client concerns, and client behaviors so that service offerings can be seen by clients as a value addition. Robotic process automation, RPA, is now leveraged by a degree of reasoning through recent AI applications. And this can graduate bots from mundane tasks to perform repeatable outputs. RPA-led reconciliations will face less difficulty in matching different data sources, saving time and minimizing errors. Preparatory tasks in auditing in future can be eased by collection of data that enables compilations with contextual narratives. Extraction of information directly from invoices and its application into the financial system could lessen voluminous manual entry. Trust Quotient, sir, is bound to be enhanced if these tools can organize information and support audit conclusions to present clients as well as users with single version of truth, making it difficult to contest exceptions and qualifications if these are warranted by circumstances in the audit opinions to be issued. May I close my remarks with two exhortations that could promote and sustain the trust quotient. First, as big data becomes democratized, auditors must encourage clients to convert data lakes. When I say data lakes, I mean data comprising raw data. And data lakes must be converted into data warehouses. That is, data which is compressed and mapped data. All this with inbuilt cybersecurity and governance elements. Finally, the ICAI and especially the members at large must champion open standards and application programming interfaces, APIs as they are called, encouraging integrated flows, discouraging closed legacy systems. And even in the cloud accounting space, open ecosystems must be encouraged with applications like QuickBooks and XERO or Zero as whatever it is called. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your guidance on this subject. Sir, we have received several questions. I'll try to club the questions into some buckets and would request for the views of all the honorable past presidents. Sir, I would also like to mention that more than 1,200 members have joined the webinar online. Sir, to restore trust, some members are asking that, will the following help? And the question will be common for all the past presidents. One, increase the sampling size, or maybe for some areas, make the audit of the whole of the population. For example, in our digital assurance, what we are saying is that the reconciliation of the sales with the GST portal and working out the variances and the reasons for the variances. Similarly, the provident fund on the employee's salary be reconciled with the online portal for the EPFO, etc. So whether, number one, enhancing the sample size, and second, whether the standardization of the audit documentation to an extent possible,
or providing a standardized audit documentation tool will help enhance the trust. Sampling, one, increasing the sample size. Second, a standardized audit documentation oblique tool given by the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, whether these will help. And may I request the past presidents to maybe respond in the same order in which we have invited them to speak. So can I start with Amarjit Chopra sir first?
Sanjeev, very interesting question. Of course, I think increasing the sample size may help. There's no doubt about it. But I think in the digital world today, I think the sampling becomes more or less irrelevant because you can analyze the data through the tools, such a large data. I think Kamlesh ji talked about the data being humongous. And I think in that, when you have to pick up the sample as on a manual basis, it's different. When you are going to do it through the through the tools, it's going to be entirely different. I think that will throw out more exceptions. There is no doubt about it. And I think that can improve the trust under so far as I feel, so far as that particular part is concerned. There is no doubt about it. What was the second part of the question?
Sir, the second part is the standardization of the audit working paper.
I personally, I'm not very keen about a standardized tool. Very frankly, because I think each client has its own peculiarities. Each client has got its own business. And I think even if I read SA 315, it talks of knowing your client more, the processes more for that particular matter. The control systems could be different in the different clients. So I think it is human mind which has to be applied so far as that particular part is concerned. I don't think that may improve the things through a standardized. Even if you give a standardized tool, I think it will have to be adopted, or it will have to be adapted basically to a particular client. I don't think that we can give a standardized audit program for any particular case. And we don't want any tick approach, basically, that this is done, this is done, this is done. To me, more important will be that every auditor, every person, every chartered accountant applies his own mind depending upon the peculiarities, complexities of a particular client.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now invite Kamlesh Vikamse sir, that if he wants to add on to what Amarjit Chopra sir said on these 2 points on increasing the sample size and the standardization audit working papers or the tool.
So Sanjeev, I think the auditing standard itself gives a reply to the question. As far as audit sampling is concerned, risk assessment is a very, very critical aspect of what areas you pick up and what kind of samples you pick up for auditing. And therefore, if you do a thorough risk assessment of the client, the data in the client's database, and which come in the financial statements, I think that would give you pointers. Yeah. As Amarjit ji very rightly pointed out that with digitization of data, it's very easy to now pick up large sets of data and try and point out flags. You can have flags where a small sample of transactions which come out which are not part of the symmetry can be really looked into and gone into depth. And therefore, I think whether you call it increasing the sample or you call it it's all risk based ultimately. What's the risk and what kind of auditing you're doing? Number one. Number two, on the data, on the audit working papers. Now, if the institute or somebody develops a generic tool, which could be a cloud-based tool, and as Kalesa pointed out, there are APIs where data can be moved from one solution to the other solution. If we can use, of course, I completely agree with Amarjit ji that there cannot be a straitjacketed documentation that you tick the box and this is over, data documentation is over. Certainly not. I'm not at all referring to that. But again, digitizing the data, the working papers of the auditors in a scientific way, which meets the standard requirements, would go a long way, in terms of preservation of data. And if a oversight on that audit comes, at least the auditor will be able to show properly what kind of audit he has done and show his working papers. So that is a short reply to it. Thanks, Sanjeev.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now request our past president, Sunil Goyal, sir. Sir, would you like to add on to this response on these two questions?
Only a short response in addition to what my Leonard, both the friends said. You see, we have always been advocating that accounting standards should not be rule-based, but they should be principle-based. And the same approach should apply to auditing standards. They should not become rule-based. They should become principle-based. So application of mind, assessment of risk, respondent to risk is itself built in the auditing standards. And we should leave it to the discretion of the member. But it will be helpful if in the form of guidance, the institutes come out with some publication that how, like you said, on materiality, we have an Excel tool. Similarly, on sampling, if there is a helping hand, if there is a helping guide about selection of materiality or deciding the sampling, then maybe it can serve as a useful guide to the members. And same I will say for the audit documentation. Audit documentation differs from client to client, industry to industry, size to size, country to country. So generalizing may be more problematic than a solution. And but again, if there's some sort of guide is issued, I think members can benefit from that. That's all.
Right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. May I now request M.M. Chetli, sir. Sir, would you like to add on to what has already been said on these two questions?
Yeah. Trying to save time, I would say the real difficulty arises for those firms which do both small size audits and big size audits. Those who are doing only big size audits, they know these techniques well. Now, let me look at those who do both small size audits and big size audits. I think that is where I'll try to answer the point, saying that sampling size increase is not the only solution. The solution would lie in using audit tools which are otherwise generally available for big size audits. I think that's the only addition I would make. Other thing is on audit documentation. While I agree with all these comments which are made so far, but knowing the kind of population that we have who do audits, I think some kind of proper audit documentation, like I think the institute has come out with what could be the working paper file. I think these are good indicators of things which are like minimum benchmarks. Now, within those minimum benchmarks, one could expand the way one wants to do it. But I think it's a very useful guide for many, many people in the practice if we come out with those kind of documentation. Only one more addition, which I think was not put up as a question, but you mentioned about use of database, which is otherwise available at large. Now, I know that this is being considered by the regulators to make it a normal audit practice. Now, I look at it as a double-edged weapon. And why do I say weapon? That it is very nice to say that you can go to GST database and see whether your client's purchase and sales are matching. But that's also an obligation. Every right is an obligation. And that would expand the scope of areas of work that we are doing so much that I'm sure the institute will have to study the subject, whether that kind of database, which is government database, should also be looked into by every practicing CA. The simple reason being, today at least we are able to say that we have audited on the basis of books of accounts and information made available to us by the client. Now, when you say that you are going to look at the database, I think the fundamentals of availability increase so much that it's a big weapon which comes into your hands. But I think that's the only thing I can say on that use of database, which is otherwise government owned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, SEBI has proposed that they will mandate a separate audit opinion on this digital assurance for a select class of the listed companies. Most likely it may happen from next year. Thank you, sir. May I now request Y.M. Kale, sir. Sir, on this particular subject about sampling and on the standardized audit documentation or tool, would you like to add to what has already been said?
It may not be prudent for me to comment on this for two entirely independent reasons. The first is that for the last 21 years, I have performed no audit and therefore no sampling. The second and perhaps more cogent reason is that I was unceremoniously chucked out of the profession for the very reason that the samples which were given to me were those selected by the client. And I did agree with that.
Thank you, sir. May now move to the next question, and this time, let me start with YM Kale, sir. MM Chitleji raised a fundamental question that the interpretation that NAFRA is taking about the auditing standard and interpreting them literally, is it practically possible to apply in that sense? And if no, then, how should the profession respond to such challenges? May start with YM Kale.
Well, I think the problem is endemic and goes back change in the late 40s when the profession and the company law everywhere in the world moved from true and correct to true and fair. Before that, the profession always reported on whether the accounts were true and correct. And then came a major change in company law where we were left with an abstraction called true and fair. And the principal difference was that there would be a susceptibility to interpretations, which necessarily implied the introduction of some form of rules. But it would generally be sane to argue that these rules be judgmental rather than prescriptive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Since this question was raised by MM Chitle sir only, and he has already given his views, may I now request Sunil Goel sir that if you would like to add to this.
No, I appreciate the point raised by Mr. Chitle. It's a very, very important issue. But ultimately, the true and fair concept, which has been evolved over the years, and I think we have very nicely elaborated upon this thing. And therefore, what Mr. Kale said is in the right perspective. And I will not like to add something to that thing. I think at this juncture, I suggest Mr. Chitle himself explains, because he has asked this question and he is a veteran of this profession. If he can explain that why he is recommending the intended thing, it will be beneficial to all of us.
Sure, sir. So may I request MM Chitle sir to kindly elaborate further on this matter.
I think I remember my school days that the one who talks more becomes the monitor of the school.
Monitor of the class.
Okay. Knowing the limitations of a public program and what we are speaking, but I think let me put out the facts as I understand it. NAFRA is an authority. The institute also is an authority. Both the authorities are talking on the same subject. Now, I'm not talking about the individual order of any NAFRA because that's not absolutely correct on any of our part to touch anything on that subject. So I think it's completely theoretical that I'm talking. Having said that, the only point which I wish to make is, suppose if we eliminate the names of the partners or the firms about whom the audit is done, and if you only look at the way in which audit was supposed to be done as brought out by NAFRA, do we really feel that that's the right way? If we feel, then I think the institute will have to, really speaking, relook at many of the implementation guides that we have. Kindly, let me put it very, very clearly. I am not trying to raise an issue about any individual order at all, any individual person at all, because that's none of our business. Having said that, if you eliminate the names of the partners or the firms about whom the matter is talked about, and if we look at how the particular standard was to be implemented, etc., let us within ourselves, and that's why I mentioned the institute and the council, that within ourselves we'll have to relook at how it is deemed to be implemented. If we feel yes, then let us look at our implementation guide, etc., to see whether they are in line with what is stated here. I think being a public program, saying anything more than this is not appropriate. There is no comment on any authority, absolutely. In fact, the suggestion was made with a very positive state of mind, saying that we need to ensure that what NAFRA intends has to be done. Now, if that is to be done, then let's look at our implementation standards and let's see how do our members implement it, if that's the real way in which the institute looks at it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I request Kamlesh Vikramsingh, sir, If you would like to add anything on this topic.
No, I think Mr. Chitle has explained very, very eloquently the issue which he is raising, and I completely agree with him that it is important for the profession as a whole and as a practitioner to know what is, how do you interpret the standard and what is expected out of that standard as far as the practitioner is concerned. So if that is clear, maybe from the institute side or NAFRA side or whatever, and I'm sure Amarjit is part of the panel as well, and he's part of the authority. Some kind of a consensus builds around from the institute side and from the NFRA side, rather than being theoretical. And as has been articulated, that audits are principle-based audits. So instead of just ticking the box and saying that this standard, this paragraph is implemented, etc., I think if a holistic view is taken, that will go a long way, both in terms of improving the audit quality and expectation what is required out of a practitioner who is actually signing the audit reports. I would just end at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Amarjit Chopra, sir, for his views.
Sanjeev ji, very frankly, whatever Chitle Saab has said and whatever Kamlesh Bhai have said, I would fully agree with them. But I will only like to say one thing here, that probably Institute needs to coordinate with the NFRA more. I have ceased to be a member of NFRA. Let me be very clear about it. I think you said I'm continuing. I'm no more from 25th of June. And they're yet to appoint the other 2 part-time members on that. So the point that I would like to make is that probably somewhere there are 2 things which require to be done. Number one, Institute needs to interact more with the NFRA with regard to what are their expectations of these standards based upon the study of the various orders. I think that's very important. I'm not talking of a particular order. But I'm definite that we need to study all the orders whichever have come in. There are conflicting views. If the disciplinary committee of the institute would have been there, or if the NFRA has gone into the orders, I think there could have been some conflicts. We need to plug those by mutual discussions. And if we feel that NFRA orders are correct in that particular case, we need to change our guidance as has been suggested by Chitle Saab. And the second thing, I think the role of the board of NFRA as such. What is the board? What is the authority? Is it only those 3 or 4 persons, or is it the total board? I think that's very important, that the institute needs to take it up with the government. We did, I will not like to comment upon it right now, but I think this is something far, far more important, because when we talk of independence, when we talk of lack of conflict of interest, the people who undertake the audit quality review, if the same people sit on the disciplinary side or enforcement side also, I think there also is a conflict of interest. So probably we need to do 2 things. One is study these orders, plug those gaps by mutual discussions, and the second thing is the role of NFRA board. I think that's far more important.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, there are so many questions which you have received, but of course there is a constraint of time. The webinar was from 6 to 8. We started exactly at 6 and now it is exactly 8 p.m. I have no words to express my sincere thanks and gratitude, and same from my Vice Chairman Vishal Bhai Doshi ji and from the entire institute. To all the 5 esteemed past present on this screen at this point of time, for taking out so much of their precious time and giving such an important guidance to our members. We are at the crossroads and we are celebrating 75 years of trust. It is very, very important that how the next 25, 50 or 75 years would be perceived by the public, because this is what will also draw future generations to the profession of auditing. Of course, now there are many areas which the chartered accountants undertake. An emerging area, of course, is ESG, data analytics, artificial intelligence, etc. But audit remains at the core of our profession. With this, I would like to conclude. with a very hearty vote of thanks to all the listeners, participants, and all the highly esteemed panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjeev.